ready to chat saltwater fishing with you. Looks like we got a good little group this week, and I did remember to hit record this time. So if anybody wants to forward a copy of this on to your fishing partner or somebody that you just want to invite or you think needs to know more about Ascension Bay, in about 48 hours, I'll have the recording up on the main schedule page for all of our saltwater Zooms. And you may already know this, but I've got the Cuba, the Christmas Island, the Baja, and the Campeche recordings all posted up there. You do have to put a passcode in, which is kind of a pain in the neck, but the passcodes are all written there. I wish you could just eliminate the passcodes so anybody could watch it, but you can't. So anyway, all the passcodes are there. So go back and watch those or share those if you're still kind of dreaming about all these different trips and trying to figure out what dates or which one works for you and you're sorting stuff out. All those recordings are now up. So if you haven't joined one of these before, I'm Joe, and I'll be kind of hosting and coordinating the webinar today, trying to teach you as much as we can about the fishery, the fish, and how to catch them, but also just telling you about our hosted trips and kind of what we do. I mean, that's what allows me to do this every week in chat fishing, is because we actually coordinate, book, and host and plan these trips to all these great faraway places. That's part of what we do. And the other part is we outfit a lot of anglers for these types of trips. So we ship tackle for saltwater fishing all over the world every single day, right from Reds. And I think we have an inventory that's unmatched by anybody in the country, if not the world. So that's what we're doing here. There's a few other guys from Reds that are on. I'll call on them from time to time. Dallas Murray is on here. He hosts the Campeche trip. Steve Joyce, my partner and one of the founders and keystones at Reds, will often be on here, but he's a busy guy, so he doesn't always make it. And then shop manager Bob, that a ton of you know, that does travel hosting and also manages the shop. Bob will often be on here, so I'll call on those guys from time to time. But I think we can just jump right in. A couple of things before I start sharing pictures and maps and that kind of stuff is just some of the background about Ascension Bay. It's one of the top destinations in the world for Grand Slam fishing. And Grand Slam fishing is essentially catching, or the idea of catching, a permit, a bonefish, and a tarpon all in the same day. Although I think more in the same week is a better goal for most people, because I don't always get one even in the same week. But in Ascension Bay, you can go and you can fish and take shots at all of those species almost every single day. So because of the cost, its proximity, its accessibility, and the variety, it's one of the top destinations in the world, and it's beautiful, and it's a very wild adventure, as you'll see in some of the slides I'm going to share today. So that's a little bit about, why Ascension Bay. It's a great Grand Slam fishery. And then you throw in snook and barracuda and jack crevalle as like three of the top kicker species. And it's just a fabulous fishery. I'll run through a map on where it is in just a moment, but a big question is always cost. The trips that we host, and I'll unapologetically implore you to join one of our hosted groups. That's the number one way we can be of service of you, is if one of us is traveling with the group, we're invested alongside you to make sure things run really well in decisions that are very equitable for the entire group and very fair for the customer get made. There's nothing worse than hearing stories about an angler or a pair of anglers that showed up at a lodge for their first time ever traveling to a saltwater destination, and they kind of get the short straw all week. They get the least experienced guide. They're the last boat out in the morning. They're the first boat back in the afternoon. They don't feel like they're getting a fair shake on getting access to the more experienced or talented guides. When a boat motor broke down and they had to get, a second-rate boat, or there was a delay, or somebody had to go out late, they felt like they got the short straw several times. You join a hosted trip with us, and we're a spokesperson for the entire group, and we're gonna make sure that trip runs extremely well, because we're right there on the ground and we can make decisions collectively that best favor the entire group. And it's a lot of fun. We do a great job of coordinating the groups, and you have a mentor there alongside you that either has extensive experience at that fishery or extensive experience just in coordinating these groups and how to make things function quickly. If there are anglers that are just moving slow and holding the group up, the host can give them a little kick in the pants and get them moving and make sure everybody's getting out on time. If there are anglers that want to come in early and that could be a problem, we're going to make sure that anglers that want to come in early are paired together, so you don't have one guy that says, "Hey, I want to come in early one day," and another guy is like, "I want to fish as long as I can." We help sort out all of that stuff as a lead group coordinator. So I implore you to do the hosted trips with us, and we'll refer to that a lot today. But whether you're doing a hosted trip or you're fishing with Grand Slam Club, Palometa Club, or whoever down there, Pescamaya, use this information today to help improve your experience with any of the other outfitters as well. The cost for the trip that we run is currently $38.95 for 7 nights, 6 days. It's about the best cost out there. It'll probably go up a little bit. Just fuel, food, everything's going up. And then we have some hosted dates. And I'm going to drop a few things in the chat right now. Now, as questions pop up about the trip during today's discussion, you can refer to this page on trip details for our hosted trips. And I'm going to put in our 2024 hosted dates into the chat as well. So we have some great hosts that are going to run fabulous trips. So if you're thinking about getting into this and you're a single angler especially, and you don't have a fishing buddy that wants to do this trip, jump in one of the hosted groups. We'll mix you up with the other single anglers. You'll split a boat, split a room, makes the cost really good. Okay. I'm going to start screen sharing, and I'm going to rely on Dallas or a few other folks that have been on these to help point out if my screen shares aren't working correctly. So this is one of the links I dropped in. This has all of our trip dates. It's on our website. You can click through if you haven't seen it before. This is where all the little details get answered. It's very boiled down. It's short and to the point. Okay. So this is where that lives. But we're going to jump over to Google Earth here, and we're going to just talk about where this is and where you're going and the travel logistics a little bit, because that's always a big question. We're way up here. If you don't know where Red's Fly Shop is, I'm going to show you just real quick. This is the city of Yakima, and we are way out here in a very remote location, way up here in the Yakima River Canyon. And I'm at home right now, so I'm not actually at the shop, but there's Red's Fly Shop. And so we're way, way, way up here in Washington State. But no matter where you are in North America, this is a very accessible destination. You're going to fly into Cancun right down here. It's a direct flight from most major hubs every day in the U.S. You drop into Cancun. We organize all the ground transportation for our hosted trips. I'm not sure what the other groups do, but when we have one well-coordinated group of 9 anglers and a host, we just all meet right outside the airport. And then we start the long drive south. So the long drive south has us going through Playa del Carmen and eventually Tulum right along the coastline. And we roll into Tulum. And we've done this a couple different ways where we've overnighted in Tulum on the way down. Over the years, we've kind of gone back to the original, and that's just grind out the long. It's about a 4-hour drive. And we drive right down this crazy peninsula to Punta Allen. And so this is the road that you drive down. It's pretty much right through the jungle. You've got water on both sides of you. You can see it various times. And the drive is pretty nuts. But once you hit this part of the drive, it's pretty well dark by that time. And it's a long drive, but it's worth it. It's kept Punta Allen very remote and very special. And that's where most of the major lodges that service Ascension Bay are. Is Punta Allen. And that's this major point out here. And this is Ascension Bay right here. And We fish this northern inlet as well. It's a much softer bottom. It's a little bit more turtle grass. It's not quite, it's not that hard white sand with palm trees like you may see photos of down in southern Ascension Bay. But we fish primarily down in the southern end of Ascension Bay, down in here. And one of the more famous parts of Ascension Bay is the Tres Marias. It's one of the prettiest places that you could ever flats fish on Earth. It's absolutely gorgeous. But we get into the lodge that evening, so we go in on a Saturday, and it'll take me a minute here to find the lodge. We've fished with the same group since 2010, and you can see there's a trail that's well worn across the soccer field here, and we are staying in this lodge that's located right there. And we walk across the soccer field each morning, and takes about less than 5 minutes, and then these are the guide boats parked at the marina right here. And so you wake up in the morning at the lodge, we run to the lagoon over here, jump in the boats. There's a boat going through the mangrove lagoon. This must have been probably in the morning because that ponga's headed out. Come out here, you jump into the Black Lagoon, so you head through a series of lagoons. It's really fun. And then you blast out of this mangrove slot right here, and you head south out into Ascension Bay. It's just one of the most beautiful feelings when you come out of those mangroves and out in this wide open out into Ascension Bay. And these portions of Ascension Bay are a little bit deeper, not extremely deep. A lot of days you'll shoot out through what they call Snake Island, and that's Cayo Calabro. Cayo being the key, Calabro being the snake, and we shoot through one of these channels here. Sometimes we'll fish around here, but for the most part, you're going to be back in all of this expansive network of flats. And there again, there's the Tres Marias, and Villa Grande is back here, and sometimes we'll wind up all the way back in here, although that gets a little bit milky at times. But anyway, just a spectacular place to fish. It's world famous. Extremely well known. I think everybody that's, every author that's ever written about saltwater fishing has all been to Ascension Bay. Me personally, I spent in 9 years, I went 10 times. I haven't been to Ascension Bay in, gosh, probably 5 years. We've continued to coordinate groups, and I'm one of the lead coordinators for all of the Ascension Bay groups, but we've had lots of hosts step in to kind of my role 10 times. I still miss it every year, but I've got 3 teenagers and I can only travel so much. So I've got a handful of trips that I do. But absolutely love Ascension Bay. So much of what I learned about saltwater fishing is from Ascension Bay, because the huge variety of species that you have there in Ascension Bay, you're going to get opportunities to throw a predatory species like jack crevalle and tarpon and snook, and then also shrimp eating species like bonefish and permit. And I'm going to run through a whole slideshow. I'll share a few videos, and I'll share fly selection and stuff like that with you as well. And I haven't seen any chats come through yet, but I strongly encourage you, use that chat feature, because I will jump back at those questions. And then later on at the end, we'll just go live fire with just voice-to-voice Q&A. But the chat is very helpful because I can kind of hit stuff in order as we go. But I think I'll just start. Let me set my slideshow up, and it's kind of a fun way to help keep me on track as well, and show you some photos and things. But I've just had the funnest time on these trips. This is an example of one of the ponga boats that you'll be at. The group that we fish with, we run a 2 anglers to 2 guide ratio in our boats. And once in a while, one of the junior guides will have an obligation or be sick, and you might wind up as a 1 guide to 2 anglers once in a while. That's okay. The host will try to sort that out. But 9 days out of 10, you're going to have a junior guide who's going to do their best. They're just learning, and they're there to help you manage your line. They're there to help operate the boat when it's deep in the mangroves, then just help with any of the spotting fish or anything that they can do. And they're going to be there to help keep you safe and just make sure that your day is efficient and well coordinated. But that's one of my good friends, Troy Lichtenegger. He's now the regional sales rep for Sims Fishing Products, or one of the DC regional sales reps for that with Eric Neufeld, but they sell Winston rods and Sims waders and things like that. But Troy used to work for us, and he and I went, he would go on his own dime as a guide. He would just save up his tip money, and Troy would buy that trip while I was the host to join me there. And I just thought that that was kind of a great testimonial as to how good of a trip it was if one of our guides, and Max Carnes has done the same thing, Chad Gillespie has done the same thing, and Shan Sedgwick has done the same thing. A bunch of our guides have all paid their way there with their tip money to go on this trip. So if it's good enough for our guides to buy into, working on just a guide's wage, I think it's a great value for anybody to consider doing. But I've learned there. I listened to the guides. They taught me. I'm just so fortunate. The guides, the lead guides speak very good English. They're able to teach and explain and really take time to teach you. The junior guides also speak. It depends on the assignments for the day. But the other thing about the hosted trips, and I don't think I pointed this out, is we generally rotate our guides each day so that everybody has a different experience, from the most experienced and maybe the most talented guides. And I don't know if talent's the right word, but there are guides that are a little bit more laid back. There are some that are a little bit more aggressive, and we want to rotate our anglers through each of those experiences. And they're going to teach you different things. And I think that's a good value to be on a hosted trip, is the host has a say in that. So I've learned so much on these hosted trips. The host is there to mentor. I just can't imagine not doing it this way. And I think I mentioned this already, but I will now because I can see the logo on the coffee cup there. The lodge that we host at is called Casa Viejo Chalk. It was founded and owned by the great late Manuel Chalk, who was in one of these photos with me right there in the back. And we lost him tragically about 7 years ago. His widow, Ruby, has since carried on the great tradition of running the lodge, and they're extremely well connected. It's solely locally owned and operated. They're a much smaller operation than most of the others, but they're extremely well connected, and they have a wonderful tradition of putting on good trips. And we are their most important customer. So you're not going to see them, like, they don't have a big social media following and that kind of stuff. But they're a wonderful group of people that put on a great show for us. But I don't think I mentioned the lodge that we personally host and fish with. We've been going there since 2010. But your host is going to be there to mentor and teach every morning over coffee, and make sure that you're rigged up right and you've got somebody that you can go to. If you're in a pinch and you have a question, or you need a few extra flies, or you need something rigged up, or the guide was trying to explain something that you just didn't understand, the host will make sense of all that for you. You go to the host with all those problems, or questions rather, and we'll lead good seminars each evening. Usually 3 out of the 6 nights or 7 nights there, we'll lead a formal seminar of some sort. That's what it looks like when we're racing out of the lagoon in the morning when we start our day. That's what a ponga boat looks like. We got a junior guide up front, head guide, just ripping in that panga, jamming out to get into the lagoon. One of the great things about Ascension Bay is the bird life, the wildlife, the scenery is all incredible. I took that shot. That is a giant crocodile. You're going to see all sorts of cool stuff when you're there. There's manatees, there's great bird life, there's everything, including fish. So we'll jump into fishing here. And I did have one question come in chat, and I want you to keep those coming. And the question was from Mike. Mike asked, is all fishing from boat, or is there some walk and wade opportunities? It's a great question. One neat thing about Ascension Bay is, yes, there's a lot of wade fishing opportunity. And the host will coach people through this early in the trip. We strongly suggest that anglers communicate very clearly with their guides that they want to wade and walk for bonefish, so that you're not sharing bow time. You're getting your licks in, you're getting your casts. If you go permit fishing your first couple of days of your trip, you're not going to get a lot of casting in, and you're not going to really get acclimated to the adventure and get tuned in, so to speak. So walk and wade early for bones. You're going to get to walk into lagoons for tailing bonefish, nice firm white sand flats are available for wading most days. Some things will be a little soft, like ankle deep soft for some bonefish situations, but it's pretty good wading and pretty firm, very pleasant. And we'll talk more about that during the bonefish fishing section. But yeah, you're not going to be confined to the boat the whole time. And I think that is great for single anglers as well, because you're not going to split bow time. When it comes to permit, that's one of the last permit I caught in Ascension Bay. I love permit fishing there. I learned how to permit fish there. The guides there are elite permit anglers. They're very good at it. It's the #1 species that makes Ascension Bay famous or unique. And the permit are spectacular. They are hard to catch. If you know much about saltwater fishing, you will know the permit are hard to catch. And there's Ascension Bay is so well known as a permit destination. That's actually a sculpture in Punta Allen. It's a large, giant sculpture. All the pictures that I took of it never really did it justice. One of our guests took this photo of it. That you want to see it yourself to really appreciate it. But it's a fabulous sculpture. But there's actually a monument in this tiny little town of Punta Allen, which is all of about 800 people. And that's the town monument is a permit, just to give you an idea of how famous the permit fishery is there. So permit are hard to catch. They're very, very challenging to catch. That's a vintage photo that many of you that know Steve Joyce and myself, two of the managing partners here at Reds, a vintage shot circa 2000 something, from Ascension Bay. But Steve and I both really cut our teeth permit fishing there, and we're so grateful for it. And I think this shot is kind of funny because we're holding this permit, and one of the guides is still up standing on the casting deck scanning for more permit. I mean, the guides there, it's in their blood and in their culture that it's permit. They take it very seriously, and they're just a beautiful fish. They are hard to catch. I caught my biggest permit in Ascension Bay, bigger than I've ever caught in Cuba or Belize. And that was with Manuel Chalk. Taught me how to permit fish, and his legend lives on at Casa Viejo Chalk there. But yeah, my biggest permit came from there. And Steve and I both spent a lot of days and years fishing for permit down there. There's a shot from just a spectacular permit that Rick, one of our guests, longtime friends, caught last year on one of our hosted trips down there. His son Eric guides for us, and Rick's fished all over the world, and he can go anywhere he wants, and he still loves going to Ascension Bay. Yeah, it's a fabulous permit just from last year. The permit fishing itself, a lot of times in Ascension Bay is going to be, we've got this 2 guides, 2 angler system, and this shot well represents how it's going to look and work, where you've got a guide on the polling deck up here, scanning the great distances, looking for nervous water, looking for a push or swirls, anything that is water that's moving against the universe in that chop. So meaning we're seeing vibrations or chop or something that's amiss. Those guides they're incredible. They're going to spot permit from 100 yards away a lot of the time. The guide that's on the polling deck calls out the fish. Guide that's on the casting deck takes the angler, slips out of the boat, and begins the stalk on foot out into the flat, while the guide that's back on the polling deck is communicating with the guide in the water as to what direction and where to go. The guide that's on the polling deck is going to keep the boat back because the slap of the water against the boat oftentimes will disturb the boat. And then you're hoping to make one really, really good shot on those permit. Most of the time it's going to be on foot. Doesn't always have to be on foot. If you have a bum knee or a hip, or you're just not capable of getting in and out of the boat very effectively, the guides will recognize your physical abilities very quickly, and they will best set the boat up or the situation up to accommodate you, because they want to get the fish as bad as you do. But I would just say go for one good shot on permit. We did not, after the permit, I'll break away from the screen share. I want to talk about a couple of other things that we do that can help you. But you're setting up for one good shot. As far as flies go, there is no magic snake oil here for flies, but you do want to have really good flies. We've spent over a decade honing our fly selections. This is one we've had custom tied with really heavy yellow eyes. It's available on our website. I'll share some links on how to get to this stuff so that you've got a chance. We want to make sure that you have the right fly, but again, there's no magic snake oil. Couple of favorite flies that I have. That's a Casablanca crab. It's a Casablanca and it is white. And there's a Casablanca in tan crab, and then some large shrimp style patterns like a squimp with yellow eyes right there that can be fished as a shrimp so that you can fish it actually under tension versus a crab that you're going to fish on a very soft line. The shrimp you can keep under tension. And the kind of the rundown on permit tackle, we've got a variety of other species to go through. So if I'm running through this quickly, it's because I am. But the ultimate permit setup is going to be a 9-weight rod, saltwater action, fast action to handle throwing heavy flies into wind. You're going to have a fly line that's either a specific permit taper like the Rio Elite permit line or a Grand Slam line from S Scientific Anglers, a big large arbor reel that has a very smooth drag because you are going to be fighting a very fast, strong running fish on a relatively light tippet. So the drag system does matter. You don't want it choppy. You don't want a whole bunch of startup inertia and have these really choppy runs where it's pulling against a drag that just it's hard to get it going and then really easy to keep it going. Cheap reels are famous for that. So get something good for your permit rig. Fluorocarbon leader, 12 to 16 pound, 12-foot leader really is the best. We just ordered a whole bunch of 12-foot fluorocarbon leaders. They're very hard to find. Give us about a week or 2 weeks to have those in, but we ordered them very specifically for permit. They're very difficult to find. We managed to get a bunch from Scientific Anglers on the way. And then crabs is primarily what they eat. And as I mentioned, they do eat shrimp. Now, when it comes to just good technique and learning how to catch all these different fish, one of the best things you can do is come to our saltwater rendezvous in person on January 13th this year. It's free for anybody doing a hosted trip with us. It's $200 for a day's worth of clinics with myself and Steve Joyce and Bobby Miller and a whole John Kovich from Flywater Travel / World Fly. There's gonna be a bunch of us there. And it's a great day to be able to come and learn in person. Free for people on a hosted trip, $200. It's totally worth it, whether you're doing a hosted trip or not. Just buy in, register. I will drop a link in the video description, or Dallas, if he's listening and paying attention, Dallas, if you would drop a link in the chat, not the video description, but the chat for the Saltwater Rendezvous, bookmark that page and get registered for that. Because I think it's like one of the best things you can do for tactical advice on how fast to strip, when to strip, where to lay your cast, how far from the fish, stuff that we need a day to cover for all these different species. Get to that Saltwater Rendezvous. It's a great resource to learn in person. Pre-COVID, we did it, and we had folks from all over the country fly up and do that with us. And that may sound a little extreme. So if you live in the Northwest, that should tell you that that's worth an event worth getting to, is that Saltwater Rendezvous that we do. Reds, work on your casting. Casting should be something that's just a given. You should be able to have a strong, powerful cast with a double haul. Be honest with yourself. Get a measuring tape out. Practice in the yard. That you need to be able to reach out and get those fish, especially permit. They don't all require a 60 or 80-foot cast. I would say they generally are going to be 40 feet and beyond and have to be very accurate and with a very clean landing. So practice your casting by all means. You should have a very strong cast that you can lay into the wind on demand instantaneously. So those are some things that you can do. Dallas just dropped that link in the description or in the chat window there. So, and I'll keep watching that chat. If you have questions, we go, I'll hit them. But let's jump back and we're going to talk about the next species and talk about the next species. And that's going to be tarpon, I believe, if I remember correctly, the order here that we have. And that's an Ascension Bay tarpon caught on a black and purple tarpon toad. That's a very average size fish. 10 pounds is real typical in Ascension Bay. although these guides are finding more and more big tarpon in, late June, July, and August, and we're not currently hosting trips down there that time of year, but people are finding bigger tarpon there, and I have cast at, oh, excuse me there, I was trying to mute somebody and I wound up scrolling through a bunch of slides. If you're not muted, try to make sure that you're muted just so there's no background noise if you can. But yeah, there's great baby tarpon fishing here. They're super fun. And I have this photo in here that I threw in, and I just put this seminar together. Literally, it took me, I spent about 90 minutes on it right before we started so that I actually had slides in order. Normally, I just wing these things. But that's a tarpon eating a fly right on the surface. If you haven't tarpon fished before, it's absolutely incredible, these eats that you're going to get. People think, oh, I love dry fly fishing for trout. Well, what if that trout was 10 to 20 pounds or more, like the one jumping in this picture, and it jumped and fought like that? I mean, everyone knows that's a blurry photo. I took that one. I'm not a great photographer, but it is damn exciting when you can hook into these tarpon, okay? And it is a really neat environment in which you fish them. It's all floating lines. It's all lightweight flies. It's a very intimate fish. It's very intimate fishing. It's almost exclusively sight casting or casting at rollers. And I threw this video in here, and I'm going to turn off the crazy music, and I'm going to flash through this video. I'll put the link to this, or you can go back or click on the YouTube icon. Maybe, I'm not sure how it all works, but you could see some of the environments we're fishing these tarpon in, and it's pretty gnarly weather right here. Tarpon are great because you can catch them in the dark rain. You don't have to be able to see them as good, but they are so much fun catching them out of these bushes and pitching them up under the mangroves. It's a great, great time. And yes, the video is very amateur. And there's one of me being a dumb guy and breaking my rod right here on a little bit bigger tarpon. Tarpon will watch me break the rod. Yes, my fault. So all you armchair quarterbacks, yes, you can chime in there and be like, yes, that was his fault. He broke the rod. Okay, we'll just watch it break right here. So the tarpon is just about done. It's about a 30-pounder, and it's like it's done. I'd been fighting it for quite a while, and it took off right there and surprised me. So don't reach up on your rod. You're going to break it. And then it jumps a couple more times and makes me look silly. But you're going to hack your way back into these lagoons. It's a hell of an adventure getting back into some of these spots. And not every day is going to be like this. So don't complain to your guide if you don't do something extreme like this. It's not always good to go back there. Trust me, the guides are willing to work hard. They're going to give you the best trip that they can. But then you can break out into some of these lagoons and see these tarpon rolling out here. And I'm pausing right there, and now the fish swam up to it. The fish is going to eat right there. You can see the boil. Great fun. Great, great fun. But that's what it looks like, fishing for these tarpon. Sometimes we'll fish in these tiny lagoons. If you've been to Ascension Bay, you're watching this, and you're like, oh, I've probably been to that exact spot. But yeah, it's a great time. I mean, some of these lagoons and these spots are just tiny. So it really is. It's fun to watch that, even for me, even though I've been there and done that a lot of times. Let me get to the next slide here, and I'll jump back into it. But the tarpon fishing it's great. Now, Ascension Bay isn't the best place in the world to tarpon fish. It's good tarpon fishing, but if you're like, hey, I really want to just catch tarpon, to me that looks like the most fun in the world. I don't care about permit. It's permit, they're very hard to catch. You most likely won't catch a permit each week in Ascension Bay. Some people will catch two. It can be very unfair sometimes. I've been on both ends of that. But Campeche, Mexico is by far a better destination for baby tarpon. We also do that trip, and there's a Zoom recording that you can go back and look at. And I'm happy to answer at the end questions on Campeche as well. But let's jump back in, and I'll kind of start on tarpon in again. And and see if there's any chats. Tarpon have really cool mouths. They're really designed to eat upwards, and they have a lot of sharp edges. And like where my thumb is placed on that fish is very rough. There's a whole bunch of micro teeth right down here, and they will cut that tippet. And you can see that's really thick, like 40-pound tippet right there that's coming off of that hook. There's a little tiny Homer Rhodes loop knot tied to that fly. That's another little thing, is you want to learn how to tie that knot so that you can change your own flies when you're down there. Tarpon have these very hard mouths, and they can be very challenging to keep hooked. And you will need to have some specialized leaders in order to land tarpon. And there's another shot. Now, we jumped out of the boat to get a photo of this tarpon. That's Troy that I mentioned earlier, that used to save up all his tip money and crumpled up $20 and $100 bills, and then he'd go pay cash for his big Ascension Bay trip each year. Guy's a fishing junkie. I just talked to him this morning, in fact. But yeah, we jump out of the boat to go take a picture, but you're going to tarpon fish from the Ponga boat up on the casting deck. And that's a shot of Bryson. Bryson hosts trips. Bryson's a firefighter, first responder, and Bryson hosts. He's a fishing fanatic as well, and he's a friend of mine. He hosts trips for us as well. He's a great group leader, very organized, super fisherman. And that's Bryson. Some of you may have been on Bryson's trips from time to time, but he does a good job as well. But that's an example of what the front of the Ponga boat looks like, and a good shot as far as habitat. Now, with tarpon, you're going to fish anywhere from 8 to 10 weight rods. 10s are nice in the open water, especially if you're later in the year, like the April trips, May trips, June trips. 10s are nice to have if you bump into tarpon in open water. But a saltwater 8 weight for tossing flies up underneath the mangroves and in the bushes are great. You want a floating line, Grand Slam style taper, Flats Pro taper, a traditional tarpon taper. What you don't want is any shooting heads, because you're just going to throw your fly up in the mangroves. Throw your flies up in the mangroves all the time with a shooting head. And as I explained, you need shock tippet. And I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on leaders and stuff like that, but you're going to want to just get familiar with the fact that when you're in Ascension Bay, when we've talked about permit needing 1 leader, they take a very finely tapered 16-pound leader that's very long. Tarpon need a very short, stout leader with 40 to 60-pound test tippet, with a totally different fly system, totally different fly selection. You're going to want to have multiple rods rigged up for these various species at all times. As far as tarpon tackle goes, you can use kind of a whooping stick for tarpon, meaning a fairly affordable reel is fine for these baby tarpon. They don't take a lot of drag. They pull hard. They jump like crazy, but they don't do those long blistering runs on light line like permit do. So I'd say that you want to buy good stuff, but it's slightly less important on tarpon. That's just kind of my practical tip for you. As far as flies go, I'll just share with you a couple of my favorites. The smelling salts from Rio is just, that fly is killer. It swims good. It pushes a little water. It's got a good weed guard on it to keep you from snagging in the mangroves. If you land in the mangroves, you just try to very gently shake it out, and that weed guard will often do its job. The salty mullet is a must-have for both baby tarpon and snook. That fly just, I don't know what it is. It doesn't look like much. Maybe it's the eyes, but that fly, I just started fishing that the last couple of seasons, and that thing fishes better than any little brush fly or any mini brush fly that I've ever fished. And then these little millhouse tarpon toads, they land really soft. They tend to keep fish on. They're very sparsely tied. That marabou moves really well, and the marabou doesn't get tangled around the hook gape, much like rabbit strip does. So they stay really, very, very true. But as far as tarpon goes, great tarpon destination. The size does range quite a bit, but I don't want you going to Ascension Bay thinking you're going to catch 50 to 80-pound tarpon. Probably not going to happen. The biggest one I've ever been able to keep on down there is about 30 pounds myself. I've been with folks when they've hooked and jumped much, much larger tarpon. but it's not a destination in the winter and springtime that you're going to go and see, large migratory tarpon. There's better trips for that. And there's better trips for just a quantity of baby tarpon in Campeche. You're going to see, jump, catch, and get shots at a lot more tarpon in Campeche than you will Ascension Bay. But in Campeche, you won't be fishing for permit and bonefish and some of the other stuff. But you will have just mad live action at schools of baby tarpon, both offshore and in the mangroves. And I'll hit a couple of questions out of the chat real quick, and then we'll jump into Snook. And Dennis asks, is there an option for a single room, single angler? And yes, there absolutely is an option for that. I can't remember pricing off the top of my head. I want to say it's in the low $6,000 range, but yeah, you can get your own room, you can get your own boat, and take 100% of the shots for the week. That's a good option if you don't get to do a lot of fishing, you want to make the most of it. We have folks that they want to go catch permit, and with permit, for instance, the more shots you get, more likely you are to get them. So we do have an option for that as well. Well, let's jump into Snook here. Jump into Snook, and like I said, yeah, please, use that chat feature for any of the species that we've talked about so far. I think it drives good, real conversation. I'm watching the chat window. So there's Snook. Snook are one of the greatest things to reinvigorate your outlook on flats fishing. I have been so many times permit fishing for days, not catching anything, really struggling, super bummed out, and then all of a sudden a Snook like this comes trucking across the beach, or down the beach, and I'm looking on one side of the boat for a permit, and then a Snook pops up on the other side. And snooker players, when you can catch them outside the mangroves, they eat, and they've got that cool undercut, bottom jaw that you can see there. They come up and they eat on the surface. They love pushing that bait up to the surface and attacking from underneath. And they eat like an industrial toilet flushes. It's just whoosh. They eat, and man, you don't miss them, it seems like. And they stay hooked way better than tarpon. So you get to hook them and you get to land them. This is like the best of both worlds. They're fun to handle. They're fun to catch. Ascension Bay is a great place to snook fish. I've got a few pictures of Snook here. Again, they require a slightly different leader setup, very similar to the baby tarpon, but oftentimes the fly selection will be a little different. You'll need 40-pound shock tippet for Snook. And here's another Snook with Troy and Manuel right there. A nice Snook that we caught together. There's another one of our former guides, and he's hosted a trip or two. Brian Williams, one of my best friends. And he actually goes, he's a firefighter as well. And he goes on some of these trips with me as well as a customer. Although he's hosted before for us, and he's been on a bunch of these. He used to guide for us. But there's Brian with a darn nice Snook as well. And I'm showing you pictures of some of the bigger ones. I just can't help it. That one's a little above average, I'd say, but just a really fun species to catch. And you can get them, like in this, you can see in the background here, you see the mangroves, how those dead sticks are all exposed there. Well, that's because the tide's low, and the tide's really down right there. And that's what brings those Snook out of the mangroves, because a lot of the bait and the critters come out of the mangroves when they dry out, the tide gets low. Well, then the Snook just follow them out. So we get shots of these Snook in the open water when the tide's down. So when you can get the Snook with the tide down, they're pretty easy to catch, quite honestly. I mean, they make you feel good about being a flats fisherman again. So when you're having trouble catching the other stuff. But the Snook are great. If the guide suggests that it's a good day to fish for Snook, he's probably mentioning that the tide's going to hit an extreme low point. You should probably pull off of whatever you're doing and try for Snook. So always try to coordinate with your guide, on the Snook thing. If your guide says there's going to be a Snook bite, you do it. You absolutely do it, because it is amongst all the species, is very tide dependent to have good Snook fishing. But yeah, the Snook are a kick in the pants. I absolutely love fishing Snook. So yeah, the Snook are an awful lot of fun. And As far as rod selection goes, 8 weights are great for snook. Even a 7 weight, if it's a real, like a nice saltwater 7 weight, because you're going to flip and skip those flies right up under the mangroves a lot of the time. And I think those shorter rods, if you can find one that's 8 foot 9 inch or 8 foot 6 inches, I even use an old sage bass rod some of the time that's only 7 foot 11 inches. That really throws a really nice short cast right up under the mangroves. And I heard a rumor that one of the major rod companies is coming out with a little shorter saltwater rod that's going to be perfect for snook fishing. So I'm really excited about that. You will hear all about that when that finally comes to market. Just a hint that it's coming. So the snook, yes, absolute great fishing in Ascension Bay for snook. And it seems like after a rainfall can be really good as well. And you'll cast right up along stick structure and things like that. That was in Bahia Grande. That's that real extreme southwestern portion of Ascension Bay. It's often bilky down there. We cast right up in the sticks like so. We're fishing for snook right there. We caught a couple of small ones out of that stick pile right there. There was a little school of them that were there. There's another shot of a nice snook, but yeah, short casts. It says 8 to 9 weight rods on my little text thing here, but I think 7 to 8 weight rods are better. They're very mangrove oriented, and you're looking around sticks and structure for the snook. So, well, let's jump into bonefish. Bonefish that to me is like the #1 species. You hear all about all this other stuff, but bonefish to me are like the #1 thing that you should spend your time doing on any of these Grand Slam trips. You can get sucked into the big fish fever or big fish ego of getting permit or trying to get some tarpon or whatever. My fondest memories are this right here. Me walking around with an 8-weight rod and a waist pack and some shrimp flies, just targeting these tailing bonefish in 12 inches of water, catching them on these dainty little bonefish flies. And Ascension Bay is not known for big bonefish, but there's ample numbers of these 2 to 4 pound bones. They're great. And you don't have to cast at the small ones. I want to make sure people keep that in mind. Like when you're there, nothing's stopping you from passing up shots at the little bonefish and targeting the larger ones. Be patient, wait for the big shot, kind of like if you're trophy hunting for mule deer, you can't get the big one if you just keep shooting little ones all the time. So think about casting at only the big singles and the big fish, and you could make some really good shots on large single bonefish. But this is a lot of times what it looks like. This is a little cloudier than average, but you could see the other angler in the background with their guide over there. I'm with my guide right here. We're wading these shallow flats, barely over ankle deep, and we're just sneaking around taking good shots at these bonefish. It is a ton of fun. And a lot of times those bonefish will be tailing. I've got a bunch of old videos of the tailing bonefish down there. I've fished very few places since even that the fish are willing to tail and show you right where they're at as much as these shallow lagoons in Ascension Bay. Now, when it comes to the bones, 6 to 8 weight rods are good. Me personally, I'm fishing 8 weights. Almost exclusively, I'm fishing 8s because they're more versatile for baby tarpon, snook, and even permit. For fly lines, a very light, delicate taper. You're going to need to set these small flies down soft in very close proximity to the fish. I think a true bonefish taper that has a delicate presentation is good. If you're a new to casting heavy rods, you're intimidated by casting 8-weight or heavy rods or saltwater action rods, there's a line called a Bonefish quick shooter that's really good for those 40-foot and sub 40-foot casts, which are most of the casts that you're going to get. A lot of times you're not going to see those bonefish until they're up close anyway. So there's a line that casts real easy and quick called the Bonefish quick shooter that's good. You're going to be using light tippet, 10 to 12 pounds. A fluorocarbon tippet on a mono or a nylon tapered leader is a good way to do it. a fresh bonefish leader every day on a big trip like this is not unreasonable, so that you have no knots in it. And if you do break off a fly, it breaks at the fly. You can just tie a new one on. You're not out there tying blood knots or surgeon's knots while you're wading around. I think a $5 tapered leader each day to 2 days is not an unreasonable thing for bonefish. So I say bring like 6 tapered leaders for bonefish. 10 feet, 12 pound would be a really good way to go, or 10 feet, 10 pound. If you're a little bit more experienced, I'd say the light tippets are fine. If you're new to this, 12-pound tippets are a little bit more forgiving for just setting the hook and not breaking fish off. Bonefish are unbelievably strong and fast. They'll blow your mind the first couple times they run. There's an average bonefish there. They eat a shrimp pattern. The shrimp patterns should be number 6 or number 8. Number 4 would be big. They should have little bead chain eyes like this one right here, or little bead chain eyes like this little bony foo-foo right there. That's called a bonefish butta. One of my favorite flies. That thing is just killer. That thing, it just absolutely gets them. And I'm going to share with you, I think this is the right time to do it. I'm going to share with you just a fly list for Ascension Bay before we jump into a couple more species. Just show off a couple more of the things that you can catch there. But I'm going to share this link that I'm about to show you here in the chat window. And so you can just look at mine and then go to that link later, however you enjoy watching the webinar. But this is a fly list right here. And this is basically a complete package. And we tweak this from time to time, but it's a really good all-around fly list to see what we recommend. And this is not an exact formula. You can come down here and you could add all this to your cart right here, the whole fly list. But as you can see here, there's kind of a breakdown that we suggest for going to Ascension Bay. So you can add the whole thing to your cart. And I think I just I didn't add it all to my cart. Oh yeah, I did add it all to my cart. And then you can come in here and you can say, hey, I've already got a couple of bonefish flies that look just like that. I take that one out. But some of these flies that I'm showing you here, they're all on that list, like the smelling salt and those toads. Everything I've shared with you to this point is on this fly list right there that I just put in the chat. So if you're wondering, like, hey, I'm planning on going, how do I get access to this? All this stuff is on that individual fly list. So that's now over in the chat window. And the flies are really fun. I mean, like preparing for this and planning and stuff, that's part of what's great about Ascension Bay is there's a lot of species to prepare for, and you kind of takes it to the trip when you're not yet to the trip, when you're planning these things. Let me share with you a couple more species that we catch, and then you guys can just start hitting me with just live fire, voice to voice stuff, and just asking questions or just general sharing. So yeah, let me jump back to this and we'll go on to a couple more species. So there's going to be shots of barracuda. That's a barracuda from Ascension Bay. I've caught spectacular barracuda there. You can catch them on big needlefish flies, needlefish poppers, or general poppers. They're so cool. They're fast. You're going to need a wire leader for these. That's why part of why you should come to our saltwater rendezvous on January 13th is we'll go through rigging up all this stuff. But you're going to need a rod set up with wire tippet to protect against the vicious teeth of the barracuda. There's barracuda there, great fishery for that. The jack crevalle are insane when you get shots of these jacks. They're also called a Mexican GT or a Mexican giant trevally. They're a little smaller than the giant trevally that you're going to encounter in the Seychelles or Christmas Island, but they are pretty darn cool. You can look and you can see that the pectoral fin on this jack right here is probably about 12 inches long. Anything that needs that kind of wings is extremely fast and powerful because that way it can steer when it's swimming Mach 10 to attack your fly. The jacks are really cool. You're going to see those. and they bite most things. This one was caught on a tarpon fly right here. Jacks aren't as selective. They can be very aggressive, very opportunistic. They'll eat crabs, they'll eat shrimp, they'll eat bait fish, they'll eat almost everything. You can catch lemon sharks. Lemon sharks are going to require leader as well. Now, there's a bunch of species that I didn't put on here. You can catch varieties of snapper. You can catch triple tail. We've caught cobia. And there's a whole bunch of other just mangrove critters that are going to, there's blue runners. There's just a pile of stuff down there that you can catch in Ascension Bay that aren't even mentioned, you know, in the seminar today. But that kind of wraps up my slideshow here. We're sitting on almost an hour. I think I did pretty good trying to download as much information about a complex fishery like this, or a very special fishery like Ascension Bay that I can today. But why don't you guys hit me? Well, let me do this first, and then hit me with questions and answer stuff. If this is a trip, either one you have more questions about, email me at joe@redsflyshop.com. Just email me directly. I'm delighted to banter back and forth with you. I work very odd schedules. I do some guiding. I work from home, work from the shop. I work the shop floor, etc. So email is really good. I can be a little hard to get a hold of at the shop on the phone. Email's great, joe@redsflyshop.com with like technical questions. Questions about availability, dates, get a booking in. Dallas is on here, and he hosts the Campeche trip. But Dallas will tell you what to do if you want to just get booked and sign up for it. The sooner is better, so that we have space available and you get the best deal on airfare in and out of Cancun that you can. But Dallas, tell them what they should do if they want to get booked up to join one of the open weeks.
Yeah, I think probably the best way to go about that would be to shoot me an email, which is just Dallas@redsflyshop. I'll chat it in there. Or you can book online. It's a great resource to kind of look at that. And then if you have questions or whatever, you can always call the shop number, and get a hold of me that way. But email is a great way to correspond in terms of getting your bookings made. I can answer all your booking questions that might come up. I think Joe's going to send some of the available dates and hosts. So if you have questions about those dates, travel stuff, any sort of those booking questions, feel free to shoot me an email, and we would love to have you on one of those weeks.
Yeah, and then before we hit with live question and answer, all the deposit and cancellation stuff is all on the website. It's an unbelievably reasonable deposit and cancellation policy. You can read through it, but as long as we fill the trip back up, say you have to cancel, as long as we can resell the trip and get the trip filled to capacity, which we do 9 out of 10 times, there is no risk. There is some risk if we are not able to get the trip completely sold out and you cancel, but we are a lobbyist on your behalf with the lodge. We're a great liaison booking agent to be able to use for the trip. So yeah, hit me up if you guys have questions that you just want to speak out now. Go for it.
Is to fly fish the pond over here for trout.
I can't tell, Donald, if you're asking a question to me or you're just chatting with somebody in the room there.
No, disregard.
Oh, disregard. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, so.
Okay. Yeah, I was like, man, you're talking about trout fishing in a pond. I was thinking, man,
I switched to trout fishing here at the ranch in Woody Creek, Colorado, but didn't know I was live on audio.
That's okay. We all need a good chuckle every now and then. Well, thanks for being on today, all the way from Colorado. Yeah, what question? You guys got to have some questions. There's no silly questions. People appreciate it when the other folks ask because it drives good conversation. Go ahead and ask. It's your chance.
Joe, what are the maximum number of guests that the lodge accommodates?
So we used to run 12 and now we run 10. So we take 9 guests and a host. So that's what we book to is 9 guests and a host.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so it's a pretty small group, and then all the transportation's all shared. So, when folks are on the trip, one nice thing about it is in Mexico, we've never had any security issues or it never felt unsafe or anything, but we also travel very diligently in a group. So from the time we land at the airport in Cancun, our group is a unit and we're united. So we meet outside the airport. We have the same driver. We hire the same driver, Con transfers. And we travel as a unit in 1 or 2 organized vans with, professional licensed uniform drivers that do that route. We stop for dinner to go basically in Tulum on the way down. So we all have shared transportation, and it's very nice traveling with a group that's organized and coordinated and together for so many reasons. But yes, we have a group of 9, and then we all travel together to and from the lodge. Okay, next question. Let's go, people. I'm going to start calling on folks. Ask questions because I know if you're on this long, you probably have to have something to ask about. Are there, before I just kill it, I'm not going to call on anybody. I'm teasing. And if I was going to call on anybody, it'd be Rob Saxton. I noticed Rob was off the call, and now he's back on the call, and Rob's been fishing fanatic. So if I was calling on anybody, it'd be that guy right there because he's been to Christmas. I don't know how many places he's been this year, but he should be leading these seminars with the amount of fishing he's been doing. But if anybody would like a comparison, like, hey, I'm thinking about doing a trip and here's what's important to me, and I'd like to compare 2 trips, that's also something I'm happy to talk about. Campeche, Christmas Island, or whatever on the seminar here if you want me to do any comparisons as well.
Joe, you got a couple more that came into the chat while you were talking.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Good Lord, I'm naive here. I'm not doing my job. Here I'm begging you to shout it out, and you're texting it to me. Experience level. That's a really great question. I think Ascension Bay is one of the best places you can go if you've done some trout fishing. You can cast a little bit. You can throw a dry fly. You can throw a streamer. If you're going to go saltwater fishing, Ascension Bay is probably the #1 place you can go for a whole bunch of reasons. You're going to cast at everything during the week. At some point, you're going to make a cast at a permit. At some point, you're going to make a cast at tarpon, a snook, and definitely bonefish, probably barracuda. It depends a little bit on how many rods you have set up because each species takes a little different leader and fly recipe to have a chance at them. You're going to cast at everything. A lot of the shots can be very, very close. As you saw in some of the slideshows, there is going to be cloud cover from time to time. In cloudy situations, you're not even going to see the fish when they're 60 or 80 feet away. You're only going to see them when they're sub 40 feet. So that said, you don't need to be able to make a really long cast, but some of those instinctual, reactionary, almost trout-like deliveries of the fly that are very quick and snappy favor somebody who's done a little bit of fly fishing and doesn't necessarily have that 80-foot cast. That's okay. You're going to be able to be within range of most of that stuff. That said, the better casters every time at the end of the week always seem to accumulate more catches. It's just I've watched it every year, every time I've hosted. The experienced anglers might have a few dry days, but at the end of the week, they're the ones holding the permit, the tarpon, and that kind of stuff, it seems like. So I don't want to dismiss casting skill. That'd be silly of me to do. But you're going to get a little shots at everything. And if you're new to saltwater angling, I implore you, listen to your host, not necessarily your guide, when you're on these trips with Reds for advice on how should I spend my time? How should I communicate with the guide? Walk for bonefish. Ask the host to pair you. If you're a single angler and you're newer to salt, ask the host to pair you with other anglers that also want to wade for bonefish. To me, that is the hidden gem of Ascension Bay, is the walking for bonefish. So if you're new, definitely do that. Super beginner friendly. And so next question, is there ever a boat ride or partial from the airport or just by van? Phil asked that. Very good question. And Phil probably knows a bit more about the trip than Phil's letting on. what we've done a whole bunch of ways. The van ride's 4 hours and the road sucks, but it's what it is. It keeps Punta Allen wild, right? That drive down there, the last 2.5 hours is bumpy potholes. It's not the funnest ride in the world. The first 45 minutes is exciting. The next hour and 45 is not all that cool. So what we've done in the past is we've hired out boat rides to go back and forth and save some of that drive. Phil, we try to do that. We don't advertise that we do it because we can't guarantee the service each time. We generally take a boat back from Punta Allen up to the Boca Pila Bridge, closer to Tulum, so that we don't have that tedious van ride on the way home. We don't roll that in as part of the trip anymore. We used to, but it wasn't always available because that's the guide's only day off for the entire week. And a lot of times they have to have a day off. They've got to work on their boats. They got to work on the gear. God forbid they want to go to church or have a family day or something. So we can't always count on the guides to do it. And then the eco tour services that we would use aren't always available. They might be booked up on other tours. So can't guarantee the service. We usually do it. It's about 30 extra bucks cash a person, but we do try to do that. We just don't promise it as part of the trip. So hopefully that accurately answers your question. The other problem we bumped into with that is it might be raining. And when it's been raining, we've said, hey, we want to take the vans, and then it's too late to change. And we have to do the boat ride in the pouring rain and then get on the van and get in the on the plane. And that hasn't been so cool as well. So we do try to do that, but we don't guarantee that service. Phil also asked, could you get away with bringing 2 8-weights and a 10-weight? Absolutely. That would be a wonderful combination. 10-weight for the Barracuda and open water tarpon and the sharks, and the 2 8-weights, either Bonefish permit Snook, rearrange those leaders, how it makes the most sense. That's a great combination. For the 2024 dates, is there a better date for fish? It's a very good question. Not really. We've not seen any better or worse fishing. In fact, I'll share a screen with you here real quick. I always do this if I remember for all the different discussions. So this is the weather history for Punta Allen, and we're not really looking at a huge temperature swing. We're looking at highs of 87 in April versus highs of 82 in February or January. So it's not really all that much different. Lows of 73 to 78. I mean, that's barely perceivable for us in North America. And then the rainy season really starts to hit later on. So it is quite a bit rainier in April. So that could be construed as a downside, with January really being the dry month. So it's a little opposite, a lot of times of what we think it's going to be. And we haven't seen any better fishing at any other time. If my goal was to catch a migratory tarpon, I'd probably be down there in July, but it's rain. It can be rainy, and the humidity is going to be ridiculously hot. It's going to be 88 most around the clock. It starts to get a little bit hot in July, especially if you're in the mangroves as well. So the temperatures really aren't that different, and January being a dry month, there's pros and cons to it. The peak season down there is historically said to have been March and April, but it's so week to week dependent. When you get into April, May, June, you do get the sun a little bit more overhead, which illuminates the flats, and you can see fish a little bit better just because of that degree of sun penetration. We haven't seen better fishing necessarily. It has so much to do with the bite, fish hunger, what the individual weather is doing down there. So it's a crapshoot every time. And there's so many different species. What's good for one species might not be good for another. And I don't really have, it's not like Christmas Island or some of the other places that rely on really big tide swings to give you opportunities at particular species. So no, we don't really, we try not to outsmart ourselves with tides, weather, or timing. Yeah, Ron's giving me some props on just my advice. It says sounds pretty sound, and practice is really important. And just, yeah, thanks for the props, Ron. It's nice to have this reinforced. No matter how many times I do these, I want to make sure that I'm giving information that's credible and accurate. Yeah, and Michael asked, do tides dictate good fishing or not? Like I said, a tide that's good for one species might be good for another. And wind in Ascension Bay, from what the guides have explained to me over the years, you could look at tide charts and moon phases, but just prevailing winds have a tendency to push water around and change water temperatures and water clarity and things much more than like moon cycles and things. So weather is a lot bigger deal, the particular weather patterns. I have asked again and again and again and again, and there's really no, formula to it. So you just sign up, you go have fun and go have a great time. I can't really offer any information about tides or anything like that. So just go when you can go. And thanks, Rob. Rob has like done an insane amount of saltwater fishing, and he says he always learns something. So that's kind of a nice statement. Thank you, Rob, for that. Anyway, if I don't get any more, if I don't get any more questions here, I mean, speak up if you like. Ron said, please talk about sunglasses. It's a great question. I'll share with you what I currently wear. And I don't think brand, matters a tremendous amount. Some ones I wear on sale today. That wasn't intentional, but I'll show you what if I had to choose one set of glasses, what it would be. I wear these Costa Salt Break with a green mirror in the glass lens. I mean, we only sell the glass lens at Reds. I did not know those were on sale. This wasn't scripted because those were not on sale 2 days ago. So that's what I currently wear if I had to choose one lens to do it all. I feel like if somebody wanted to have a really good array of sunglasses, they would have one of these silver lenses. I think they're called, Sunrise Silver Mirror. Sunrise essentially saying they're really good for sunrise, but they would have like the sunrise or some type of amber lens would be a really good, kind of a two lens system. So holy smokes, you can get these for $72 less at Walmart. I'm sure. I hardly believe it. My goodness, Walmart's in the sunglasses industry now, Costa sunglasses. So I would say like the Sunrise Silver Mirror for a low light, and then the green for just all light. I'm not a huge fan of the blues. The blues are more for like really intense sunlight. A lot of times I'm looking for a fish that might be reflecting blue like a bonefish. And blue to me, I had one set of blues and I felt like they were just a little too dark and cut down on what available light there was a little too much. So that's my 2 cents on sunglasses. So if nobody has any other questions, we would love to get you on one of these hosted trips. Like your success is very important to us. We only host trips that we believe in and we put our heart into them. We want you to be super duper successful. We're going to be there with you. Anything we sell you or coach you on these trips, we're going to be there. We're not going to sell you stuff or prepare you in a way that you don't need to be successful. When we're elbow to elbow with you on these trips, we're using the same stuff you are, and we're there as a spokesman and liaison for the group, so you can trust us to do a great job. So sign up for one of the trips, then we'll handle like as soon as you get your deposit and that kind of stuff. If a hosted trip with Reds is on the docket for you, immediately when you book, you'll get emailed this page right here. I'm just going to share with you how we do this so you know a little bit about Reds. Maybe a book for this year, maybe it's 2025, I don't know, but I'll tell you how we work. You get emailed a web page it's a discrete page just for people who are booked. If we have updates regarding what documentation you need, it's all on this web page. It's all live. All the flight planning information is on this page. It's very short and to the point. Everything here is very boiled down and condensed. We don't want to bog you down with a whole bunch of BS that you don't need to know. By the time you see this page, you're already booked. You just need to know where to book your flight, where to be and when, what documentation you need to be, how much cash do you need, and what to pack, that kind of stuff. You fill out a form when you do a trip with Reds. You hit submit at the end. We've got all your information and we'll manage the best possible trip that you could imagine going on. So that's how it works when you book with Reds. You get emailed all the information. It's all automated. You're not relying on somebody to actually hit send and attach documents and all that kind of junk. It's a very streamlined process. So get booked up. Email me, joe@redsflyshop.com. Any questions you got. If you got private questions you just want to send to me directly, I am delighted to take care of all your questions, get you signed up or just get you informed. And like I said, if you are booking with another lodge or another outfit or something, just tell us. We want to help you out. We want you to still have a great trip. We're not mad at you or envious. Let us hook you up with flies and leaders and tippet and tackle and that kind of stuff, and then help your group out. Utilize us. We're also a fly shop. We only host a few weeks a year, so we can't host everybody's trips there. We just want to outfit you right. So if there are no more questions, I'm going to end the meeting. This recording will be up in a couple of days. Send it to your fishing buddies and get them informed and signed up and excited about the trip as well. So thanks, everybody. Any more questions?
Thanks, Joe. Is a passport required?
Yes, just a passport required is all you need. You don't need any PCR testing or any junk like that anymore. It's a really easy in and out as far as travel goes.
Visa?
Nope, no visa.
Gotcha. Thanks
Good
for the show. Great show. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Hey, thanks for everybody. Like I said, this will be recorded and back up in a couple of days. And then all the other ones, Campeche, Christmas Island, Baja, Cuba, all those recordings are now up and online. So if you want to go back and revisit any of those, they're all on the main Zoom recordings page, which will be available through our homepage for another week or so before I just cycle it out. So you can check those out. But anyway, thanks a ton, everybody. Really appreciate you staying in this long and hanging on.